Welcome everyone. We'll get started soon. The aim of today's meeting, we'll have people sort of pop in and out, is to sort of go through the initial learner profile, which we'll share with you where we're at and the timeline for schools to have access to, and we'll talk to you about what we've done in terms of the data management, which is obviously a concern for some schools, and we'll talk to you about how we're managing that, how we're de-identifying the student data. In particular, what we want to show today is where we're going and possibly where the profile tool will evolve into probably the second half of term 4 and the timeline for that availability. Then what we'll do is we'll talk through the basically the teacher professional learning course that Vicky and I will be rolling out in the New South Wales, Victorian and South Australian term 4. We will be slowing down the release of that PD course until most of the schools have started term 4, because of the fact that the Queensland schools are significantly out of alignment with the timing of term 4 and what we want to achieve out of that course. And then we'll talk to you about where we see that course rolling into next year, and looking at, for example, looking at what we want to do with that, and how potentially other schools can use the data that we elicit from the pilot course that we want to run. So what we're going to do to start with, my apologies again, I don't know what's happening with my computer today. It's having a bad day. So
okay, everyone can see me. Hello everyone.
so Vicky can be the person that you can see there. And so what I'm going to share with you now is the basically what you should see in front of you is basically our website. Okay, so here we go. So sitting in this website here, in our website that all partner schools have access to, and we'll talk to a little bit about that and what we intend to do, is basically what we are able to do with this particular interface is that, so this link will go out to partner schools, and what will happen is students will be able to enter in their ID. Then what will happen is each school, so each partner school, so only partner schools will be able to use this form for the reasons that we want to ensure the integrity of the data that we're collecting through this metric. And from that, what I mean by that is, obviously when you're entering in a student ID, basically speaking, that student ID will be replicated across multiple schools, and in our baseline data set, that has been shown to be fairly accurate. The fact is that there are multiple student numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 existing and hanging around. And so what will happen with that is each school here, so when the student comes in, it's imperative that the partner schools are all selected in here. And then what will happen is, to make this work, basically there's a hidden number that will then be generated that links that student to that school. Now, if the student puts in their right ID and selects their right school, we will have no issues moving forward. If they pick the wrong school, what that will do is it will create a few headaches in the back end, but only in terms of that student seeing themselves against themselves over time. And you'll see that soon. So yes, the survey is long. but we're wanting to do the best we can with this data. So, for example, when we look at even like the subjects, so we've mapped all the subjects in Queensland, Western Australia, South Australia, Victoria, New South Wales, Tasmania, and New Zealand. And we think we have finally grouped all the subjects together. Now, you can see that there's a lot of hashes and brackets and so forth. And you would imagine that when you go so broad. So what this is basically going to do from now on is we're going to collect the students' subjects into buckets that will enable us to do some analysis later on. So as the student fills out this survey, basically they fill out the survey, and down the bottom, basically they click a submit button. Now, this is what we're really happy with. Hopefully this has taken us a lot longer than we ever thought. So this is without data, what the students basically, this is where, so this in the back end is the base data that will then populate this. We're working and have made some big changes. If you've seen our presentations earlier, there was some fairly technical language in terms of the metacognition and other things. So we tried to studentify that language. So this is sort of like the base look at ours. We're using sort of like a web or a radial to represent the work. So when a student actually clicks on submit in real time, this is literally what they get in about 5 to 10 seconds of submitting. So they get a thank you at the top. They get the ability to enter their email address, of which they can enter their email, their parents' email. Who we at this point in time, we do not want to collect the student email address, and we don't. So basically, we've designed this with our net developers or our web developers. Basically, this email it's sent, and we don't record any, we don't want student emails because of the data privacy and security. But you'll see down here that they actually get an output. So this output basically presents to the student. Then they're the gold thing here, and it compares against, so this is student, this is a dummy account that's linked to year 7 at Churchy. So basically what the student does is it compares them against their school and against all year 7s who have ever done this survey. So over a period of time, every time a new student submits in year 7, not only do they get this report, which looks at basically their profile, and we'll go a little bit deeper into that, what their top subjects are, their struggle subjects, what they want to improve, and then some demographic data in relation to, what are their impediments to study and what are their strategies. Okay, so what this will allow the student to see is this would take us weeks to do this sort of analysis, but this basically, when your students do the survey, they basically get this hit of data, but also this little page has a bit of flexibility. So for example, the student can take off their year level and the school. They can compare them against the same students at Churchy, or they can compare themselves against all of the year 7 students who have ever done this particular survey. What they do is in terms of this, so that would go to them. Now, what they also get, if I can get my Alt tab to work, is in terms of the email that they get, basically speaking, what they'll do is they'll get an email, comes out, and basically this is it. So basically they get a link, and so that link will open that survey and they can see it at any time moving forward. And basically speaking from this, what this will then allow the schools to do, so at this interface, they will be able to put the student ID in, they will be able to put their school in and their year level, and they will be able to see here on this particular page or the year sevens. So each school will only be able to see their school's data. So Churchy will only be able to see Churchy. Scott's PGC can only see Scott's PGC. Brighton Grammar can only see Brighton. And you do that when you log in to this particular Learners Toolkit with your partner school username and password. So that is the only way that a school will be able to see their data. You won't be able to, no other school will be able to see any other school's data, because what will happen is each school has that number. And what will happen is when they come in, the number, they'll only be able to select the drop down of their school. Also, what we'll be able to do as well is you will be able to give you, if you wanted to, the output of this data. So as all the schools have started to complete this particular tool, if you wanted to take this data and input it into your own school LMS or Schoolbox, if you use Schoolbox or TAS or whatever, you would be able to take this data in a particular form that we're working with at the moment, where you'll be able to then take all of your school's data in a way in which you can then upload it into your own school LMS or data management system or Synergetic or whatever. And then you will be able to, if you wanted to, do some work with that data post the event. So we think that we're pretty happy with where we are. We're pretty happy that the students will be able to get this. They'll do the survey in your class and they'll get instantaneous feedback. They'll be able to email it to themselves, which means that they can call upon it at any stage. That at the end of this form, that they'll be able to manipulate things to suit. You as schools will get this data where you'll be able to select your school and you will only see your school's data. So you'll be able to see all your year sevens or a student in your school against like students and so forth. You'll be able to get the data out of this to put into your learning management system. The next thing that we're going to do, and we're probably going to look at doing it in the second half of term 4 as we roll it out, is probably underneath here will be some suggestions. So what we're going to look at is, sorry, just zoom in. Is that a bit better? Can I get does that suit? Basically here.
That's definitely better. Thanks, Terry.
No worries. So here, what we've got is, I've just got my train of thought. Oh, yes. On this page, we're going to set some thresholds. So for example, if the student wants to improve, say, English. And for example, if their study strategies at the moment includes, I don't know, memorizing or something like that. So what we're looking at doing is we're going to, in the data, set some thresholds in the back end that would give the student some suggestions at this thank you screen. So what that means is that they submit their email, but on this screen there'd be like, hey, you've identified, I won't say hey, but you've identified that you want to improve maths, but you've also said that your study strategies are X, Y, and Z. Here's some alternatives. And that alternatives will then take those students right to some content. Now, we don't have the content yet. We're still building up the code in the back end. We've had initial conversations with the developers and we think we can do it. So for example, if a student identifies that they're basically studying, they want to improve X, we're going to then, and they haven't said that they use strategy pineapple or blueberry or whatever, but we know that if for most students who do maths or want to improve, say, languages, here's a viable strategy. If they haven't identified that, they will be directed. They'll be like, here's 3 things to improve your study now. Bang. They could be YouTubes, they could be actual exemplars, they could be templates, they could be suggested ideas. So for example, if someone wants to improve languages and haven't clicked flashcards, then what we would do is we would suggest a particular flashcard platform, and it might be Gizmo. If you're a flashcard user and you don't know what Gizmo is, Gizmo is this sort of new AI based flashcard generator, which is actually really good, works really well with Quizlet and Excel and all sorts of stuff, and is actually a really great tool for getting students started with flashcards that are pretty good quality, that are quite adaptive. So we might send out, so that suggestion might go out, bang, bang, that, oh, here's Gizmo and here's a how-to tutorial to get started. So that's the plans at foot for term 4. In terms of schools using this, we are going to have a crack with our students first in the first 2 weeks of term 4, when the vast majority of non-Queensland schools are still on holidays. The reason why we want to do that is before we let this product out of the bag, we want to make sure that this product works and is reliable. We're still testing, and we always find there's a little mistake on this form that I've just seen, that even though I've been looking at this form all afternoon, there's a little mistake on the form that we need to get fixed. So we'll fix it prior to releasing it, and we're aiming for probably, I think, like after mid-October would be when we release this out to schools. And then basically it's the ball is in your court, and you can use it as you wish. So before we move on, does anyone have any questions? You can raise your hand, type it in the chat. We're happy to answer any.
Yeah, one thing we'd be very interested to know, once you have started using it, how you're using it and how useful you are finding the information. If there's anything that you think you would like to know but isn't included, and so on. So feedback to us would be really, really helpful as we roll this out during term 4.
Awesome. Okay, so I'll any other questions, just put it in the chat. But basically, so we sort of think that this profiling tool, we are looking at the same point in time, we've got that baseline data. So there's about 4,000 plus unique students in that baseline data from the schools have used the previous version of this survey. And so basically speaking, we got some interesting stuff that we'll share probably in term 4 about what we're seeing there. But in terms of it, I think the ability to then use this data within your existing data repository for your students, you could take this. I mean, you as a school can use this profile live with the students at a individual student layer. Down the bottom here, as the student does this, these over a period of time, these will be replaced by the dates as well that they've done the survey. So you can see the student over time, and those elements would be down there as well. And so that feature, if you wanted to, you could. Our intention is to take the data that comes out of this for the Churchy students and basically create and build it within our own data management profile, and basically use this as an aspect of student reporting. So we've basically got a learner profile that all schools can use to. Now, there's no achievement data. We don't want at this point in time to muddy the water. We've got some feedback from some other people in relation to we're looking at the behaviours and what students do. But once you bring in a result, the feedback has been, well, then students become predicated with the result, and we're more focused on the behaviours rather than that. So that will be why you don't see a result, but there's nothing to stop you taking your data that will go to your school that we will never see, because we don't really, because from your schools, you just become this magic number that we don't really know very much about. I don't know whose school, for example, 34 is. We've sort of kept that secret in the dashboard that sits behind it. And so you can do that.
Can I just jump in very quickly? One thing I think just to stress is that over time, a student will be able to see their own progress. So you'll get that the first time they do it, you can treat that as if it was if they're baseline data, but over years 7, 8, 9, 10, or whenever they start and however often they do it, they'll be able to compare themselves against themselves. So if they continue to make the same mistakes when studying, for example, if they see improvement, that will be recorded here. Sorry, Terry.
No worries. And so, Andre, you've just put up a question about PDF. So this is what it would look like. I'm just going to share my screen again. It's a bit elongated, but so this is an example of like the PDF output that if a student did this repeated number of times. So basically what this is the view of the student against themselves. And so what we see here is we see the student over time. So we use date as the indicator here. So we've got a student. So this is actually data. We've changed the school. But like, for example, so this was 2022, 2023, 2024, and this is the Excel. And this print button here that you see there, so that print button is basically where it will print the PDF. And then, so that's another way that you can output the data live. It can be printed from the PDF. Okay, so any other questions before we move on? Because we'll talk about the course. So in terms of the login, in terms of that one, basically speaking, the students just we'll give each school their web address, basically, and then the big sequence of events is students entering in their user ID correctly, and then their school. That's all the information that a student has to fill out. And then it's up to you how frequently they will actually do the survey. In general, we do it twice a year. We do it at the start of the year, and then we do it at the end of the year. Every 6 months is sort of generally the sort of sequence of the cycle that we do it here. So in essence, you would then see that student, if you do it over 2 or 3 years, there'll be, a fairly good set of data on that student. But again, it's up to them to actually be able to basically enter in their ID correctly and then their school name. And if they do that, you'll basically get that datafied. So Graham, in terms of the data, if you hover over the points on the data, I'll just get it back. I've just moved on to something else. Basically speaking, if you hover over that data on the webs what the student gets, it actually gives out a score for that. So I'll bring it back up and share the screen again. Okay, so if you come over the top, basically you can hover over the top here and you can sort of see the score that is sitting on top in terms of what the school is saying and what the student is saying in terms of the number. Okay, so the last thing we'll focus on today, and then we'll let everyone go, is what we're looking at for the professional learning. So what we intend to do with this course, and a few people have seen this particular sequence, but we've bedded it down. So we're building an LMS at the same time on the website. And the purpose of the LMS will be where we do our training. Now, we've set it tentatively at 30 teachers. And after today, we'll send out a registration link that will allow you to register the teachers from your schools. So in terms of this we're looking at 3 by 3 weeks. And what we're looking at is in week 1, it's going to be focused on the theory side of things in terms of what we're going to focus on, some worked examples, and really what this course is all about is translation. So what we're really looking at here is we're looking at the concept of translation in relation to science of learning. Mainly, we're looking at what is the measures or what are the things that help translation occur in the classroom. So whatever the theory is, how do we support translation to practice? Then we're looking at, and that's Tom Perry's work. Then we're looking at Sarah Cottingham's work in relation to memory. And we're going to look at a few key elements in relation to memory and how do we translate that into the classroom, given that we've just done something previously around science of learning. And then the last one is around student behaviour strategies and practices, which is Mark McDaniel's work. And so we start off with some theory, give them people a start, and then they're going to get set a task. Then in that next week, what they're going to do is in the LMS, there's going to be a task that's pushed out, and then the teachers will basically put up basically what they've done with their translation example. At that time, also, there'll be a discussion board sitting in the back of the LMS that will allow teachers, we're hoping the discussion board actually becomes, I guess, a real key fulcrum of translation in which teachers can share, this is the goal, we understand that we're all busy, but that they'll share basically their experience. And what we're hoping to do from this is to think about the whole idea of, well, what is the shared experience of translation? And we're really interested to see what are the broad themes and trends that actually impact translation beyond things like subject and context. Now, we'll give feedback. So in the second week, we give feedback out, and we'll give individual feedback on what was submitted. And then we're going to give more global feedback, sort of looking at broader trends that we're noticing. The whole idea is that we're looking at the refinement of what has taken place as the idea using Tom's work that you actually have to support through the translation process, which is very rarely done when we look at any sort of implementation. Most of the time, we spend too much emphasis on just theory, imparting knowledge, and then magically waving the magic wand, and that all things will be translated efficiently and effectively, and that this wonderful intervention that we're doing is just going to take hold and just go gangbusters, and it's going to be wonderful. But what Tom is looking at, and also Sam Sims did a really interesting evaluation of this sort of type of professional development. And so we're using a lot of the findings of that work. And we're hoping that if we look at the impact of support through translation, what are the necessary ingredients, what are the common trends, what are the common pitfalls, and then that will be shared at the end of this, at the start of next year, with all the partner schools and the schools of people who participated, with the idea of that the goal with this is to sort of give people a bit of a roadmap to translation. Also, we're wanting to see, and this is McDaniel's work, if you support people through the translation, so you've got knowledge, beliefs, commitment, planning work of McDaniel's, he also says that most professional learning just gets into the knowledge area and maybe planning. They often see planning as coming forerunner to knowledge, where we plan for intervention, or we plan a project, or we plan a new idea or program. And then we talk about why we're doing this plan or program, but we very rarely get into the beliefs and the commitment. And so we're hoping to see that if we do things a little bit differently, do you actually affect the belief and the commitment? And therefore, by improving that, do we actually ensure the planning of the intervention actually comes to the fore? And so
just to build on that, so from that, then what we're looking at is really refining what teacher expertise actually looks like in this area as well, because it's an area that's largely undefined and something that Sarah Cottinghat and Tom Perry are also doing a lot of work. And so this will build what expertise looks like in what is a very complex practice over time.
Yeah, and so what we want to see here, and as Vicky said, is that we actually, I think we're using a few things. So the pillars of translation, they're the underpinning things that we're going to put through the actual training element, so that knowledge element of the course. And we're looking mainly at pillars 3 and pillars 4 as being really central to weeks 2 and 3 of every cycle. The fact is that we want to look at teacher expertise and the idea that expertise becomes something that you can actually equip and build the capacity of expertise. Because often we would argue, well, the argument's been made more and more that when we look at a lot of interventions in schools, most of the time we're dealing with novice and advanced beginner in relation to that rollout process. And because we actually don't develop competent, proficient, and expert, a lot of interventions fall short of the promise because you actually aren't pulling upon the expertise that comes through a lot of these things. So Tom and Sarah spoke about this jigsaw puzzle where we often see training in an intervention is like, say, I'm going to do a PD on dual coding, for example, but I actually don't look at how the expertise of the elements of the puzzle pieces around that actually impact its efficacy in terms of the longer term.
And yep. One last thing, the whole idea is that we're actually looking at just one small element of a teacher's practice as well, rather than trying to deal with the whole thing, by which I mean that they will bring artifacts or real life examples from their own lessons and will only focus in on the one thing. So it's like instructional coaching. You're just going to really hone in on the small things with the idea that then that can be extrapolated out over time.
And yeah, so we'll send out through this group and everyone who's here today, we'll send out a simple form that gives you the option of saying, if your school's interested, we've got some people have already emailed us, but we want to firm that up before we go on break this Friday. Basically, how many people you want from your school, 1, 2, 3, and who they are, because we actually need to set them up in the first weeks of term 4 here. We'll need to set themselves up with access to the LMS feature. What we also really want to do is that if there's a big enough group occurring in some schools, we'll be interested in seeing a few more sort of expanding the net, I guess, and seeing what else is happening. There is a cost for this professional learning, basically because we're building the LMS at this point in time that we're mid-budget cycle. So we need to obviously cover the cost of building the LMS. And also we are going to hopefully, if all things will pan out, have Tom, Sarah, and Mark participating in this professional learning. And so obviously we have to cover the cost of their time. Also from this, there will be an initial set of findings that get shared through the partner schools and any schools that are participating in this event. And hopefully those initial findings and then a subsequent, much deeper analysis give people and schools an idea of maybe some of the ingredients that needs to exist for real good translation to take place. Also from our end, as we build this course, the first year through or the first time through, we're also going to be evaluating the types of evidence and the types of feedback that we provide, whether it's text, whether it's discussion, whether it's video, whether it's voice, whether it's work examples, whether it's how-to videos or whatever. We're looking at probably mixing up the feedback mechanisms and the submissions that comes in as an impactor on, well, is feedback in text alone okay, or is that greater efficacy if you have multimedia or other elements. So it's coming to the end of the time slot. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer them now. We'll also share this recording with you later, so that you can, and you can share this with anyone in your schools who are interested. But yeah, we'll take any questions at the moment. And for anyone who wants to leave now, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. We appreciate how busy it is. We're coming off the end of our exam and marking. So thank you very much for coming in today. And we hope to hear from you soon in relation to the professional learning for teachers and when we launch the profile tool for all schools to use in term 4. So if you have any questions, you can hang around. I'll stop recording now, and we'll take it from there.